welcome back to the 67 steps. Almost finished, but just beginning actually, because if you know how the 67 steps works, this is the first habit formation process, the first iteration and cycle. So lots more to come, so stay tuned. Even when you finish this, there's a lot of new things coming for you. So I call this one forgetting who's in the room. So avoid this success faux pas. This one is huge. When I saw that I keep a list of the ones that I need to record. When I saw I was recording this today, I was very excited because, as you know, I originally recorded all of these 67 steps to use to train people who work for the companies that I run or partner in or operate or buy or whatever it is. And so this is one that always bears or needs repeating. So you and I have both been burned at some point in our life by listening to other people's advice. So when it comes to living the good life and getting success, that rare success that most people, the masses, never even hope to achieve and definitely never even attempt and get close to achieving, in part, the reason is at some point, it could be when you're 5 years old or when you're 50 years old, you really put yourself out there, you made yourself vulnerable, you listened to somebody. Somebody told, it could be on any subject. It could be, like I said, in school, you asked directions, you were the new kid in class, and they said that way, and then you went that way, and you realized they were playing a joke on you, and everybody laughed at you. It could be when you're older, you got some business advice or advice from your parents or someone that you should have been able to trust. And for whatever reason, either they purposely betrayed you or it turned out that it was just bad advice and they didn't know any better, which, by the way, is almost always the case. There's a famous, I can't remember, I don't know if it was Tolstoy or one of the Russian writers, basically talks about how most people are not nearly as evil or malicious as we think. They're just doing their thing and not thinking about us. So for whatever reason, you got this bad advice. And of course, we are survival machines. We are adaptive humans. We can change. We're the only species on this planet that really can adapt in a massive way. Think about it. You know, most animal species, if they lose their habitat, they die off, they become extinct if they're threatened. But humans adapt. And so when that betrayal happened to you, whether it was malicious or unintentional, you reprogrammed your brain just a little bit that said, don't listen to people, listen to yourself. And that's where we get the place we're at now in the world, where almost all people are listening to themselves. They occasionally pretend and they play lip service to listening to mentors or advisors. But if you looked at how they live, remember, it's not what you say, it's not what you feel, it's what you do that dictates your life. Charlie Munger, I was listening to his Harvard talk. It was a great thing. He said, actually, I wrote it down here. I'll read it to you. I put it on my Instagram. It's if you want to check that out. He said, what you think may change what you do. Okay? But he said, more importantly, what you do changes what you think. That's what this is all about. As you're taking action every day, doing, you're changing your thinking. Most of us have it backwards, right? We think we can think and then it's created and then we'll do. It's not really that way. So when you went out and trusted somebody, you did something, you reprogrammed your brain just a little bit to go, other people's advice, not always in my best interest. And if you take that too far, which most of us have done, I've been guilty of it, I'm sure you can see where you've been guilty of it too. What ends up happening is you violate this 67 step, this rule, which is know who's in the room. I've seen this countless times. Somebody comes who's kind of an independent free spirit, let's say it's business. They're not that successful themselves yet, they're a young entrepreneur. They come in a room and they just talk away and don't realize this was their chance to get input from somebody way wiser than them. And I'll tell you, this is my personal experience, my personal mistake. When I was, 19, 20, I went down to Mississippi. Dr. Gordon Hazard was there. A guy named Mike Murphy was there. Alan Nation was there, Gary Townsend. These are all people that were mentors and have been mentors to me, all highly successful multimillionaires and beyond. And I went to this dinner, and I remember I was probably so excited to be there with all these people. These guys were, I was like 20, they were probably at least 20 to 30, maybe even, well, Dr. Gordon Hazard is probably 50 years older than me. And so I'm there, and I just talked the whole night, and Alan Nation nicely said to me at the end of the night, I'll never forget, I was just kind of sitting there finishing up my talking, and he came up to me, and he said, sometimes, Tai, you just don't have anything to add. And that was his kind of, and he said it with a smile and joke. What he was saying is, in that room, if you know who's in that room, that's not a room I have much to contribute. That, in the law of 33% that I talk about, if you've seen my TEDx talk now, you'll realize that there's a time when you must recognize you're with the 33% that's 20 years ahead of you. Now, they may not chronologically be 20 years ahead of you, but I can't tell you how many times I still am susceptible and fall into this thing of yakety yak yak. And you walk away from those, like that dinner. It's funny, in hindsight, usually when I would be around Dr. Gordon Hazard or Gary Townsend or Alan Nation, I remember some insight they gave me. Nothing. It's a blank now. Years later, I can't remember nothing. You know why? Because I didn't give them a chance to talk. That was when I didn't know who was in the room. I should have known I was with that 33% and shut up. Now, there's a flip side of this, which I've also been guilty of. That's when you're with people below you, the 33% that you should be doing the talking, and you're listening. Don't listen to those people. They'll drag you down. They'll muddle the waters of your brain. Make no mistake, no man, as the famous poem says, no man is or woman is an island. We are immensely affected. Even if you're 30 years ahead of somebody, they can pull you down. So what you want to do when you're with that 33%, once again, know who's in the room. That's a room where you should be contributing. You shouldn't be giving them much time to talk, because everything they're going to say is going to be static interference. I've talked about that before, the static. Like when you're listening to the radio, you hear a song, you know it's a good song, but it's jumbled with all this static. So you got to turn it off all the way. Even though there's some good music there, you got to turn the whole thing off. And that's the same way when you're with that 33% who's below you. Now, when you're with the 33% that's on your level, if you're in a room with friends and things, that's when you need to know to balance it. Don't always be the know-it-all. You know, let them talk sometimes, but you contribute too. So that's really kind of the stratification I think of. And, you know, I've done this well, luckily, once in a while. I remember I was in New York with a guy, one of the most successful entrepreneurs that I know. He's pretty, I don't want to, some of these guys don't like me to say their names in these, because when I mention how much money they make, a lot of people who make a lot of money, by the way, don't like this mentioned. Don't want to be known from it. One of my friends, one of the wealthiest two guys, business partners here in LA, they have, I think he has 7 cars, Ferraris, Maseratis, Rolls Royce. He drives like a Prius to work. And I was like, why? You know, it's fun to drive the cars. He's like, no, man, I've got 200 employees in this building. What do you think they're going to think of me? So he's pretty secretive. But this guy, I was at a dinner, and he's one of the top internet guys. I'm not sure how much he makes. I would guess he makes a solid $20 million a year in terms of net. I'm sure his gross is higher than that. I was at a Laker game, and he showed me he generates leads on the internet, and he showed me his phone, and he had generated 130,000 leads in one day. Hard to believe, but he owns immense networks of stuff. So it's not just one website or anything. And so I just went there. I knew who was in the room. I knew this guy had immense knowledge, and I took him out to a steak dinner. I forget the name of the place. I still keep it on my phone, my Evernote. I think I have it in Evernote or one of my. By the way, I did that. I did a cool thing on the apps I use. Actually, it wasn't on Evernote. I think I put this in a notepad. And I just let him talk. And it's insane when you go to people and say, hey, you know a lot of stuff I don't know. And I keep that. And I would say once a year, I go back and look at those notes. And every time, that was probably in 2009 or something. But it's been giving me value every year since, because I knew what was in the room. Now, he was a guy in some ways we're peers, but in certain areas, he's 20, 30 years ahead of me. And thank God I learned my lesson back when from when I was 19 with these people in Mississippi. And I know who's in the room, know who's in the room. What most people do is they're just shotgunning. They either, and this is what is called, psychologists call, or colloquially it's called the hammer error. When all you have is a hammer, right, every problem looks like a nail. So most people, like I said, they're traumatized at a very young age, either by listening to people's advice that turned out to be incorrect, or maybe, talking too much. There's many traumas that we have, and some of them are normal, just so you know. Some people are a little too sensitive. We overemphasize our traumas. Some traumas are fine. You're going to get them. And so we then shotgun for the rest of our life. We have a hammer. We go, never listen to other people. Always dominate the conversation. Every room we walk into, whether you're Bill Gates and Dalai Lama's in that room, or you're with, absolute morons, you're always never letting anyone talk. That's man with a hammer syndrome. You don't want man with a hammer syndrome. That's the opposite of knowing who's in the room. Then you just see every conversation as, well, that one strategy worked for me one time, so I'm going to use it over and over. I'm reading an interesting book called The Moral Landscape by one of the top neurobiologists, neuroscientists. Went to Harvard, now got his PhD at UCLA here, and it's very interesting. He said our mind, our belief, our minds, our brains, scientifically, are what he called belief-generating machines. So all of us want to generate, that's why we generate that idea of, well, if you want something, you want a good idea, you just go with your gut, right? Well, that's not always true. Know who's in the room. If you broke your leg and you're in a room with a whole bunch of infant babies, you know what you would do? You would start fixing your own leg. Because the law of 33%, you're with people below you. They can't help you. So if that's your hammer and, okay, I better fix my leg myself, it's probably the best option you have. If you're with a whole bunch of friends and you're not a doctor and they're not a doctor, and you break your leg, it'd be a little give and take. You'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? And you kind of give and take. They talk sometimes, you talk sometimes. But if you're in a room with 20 ER doctors, then your best course is just to shut your mouth, pull out a different hammer, the different tool, not the hammer, the tool of listening, submitting, right? So often what happens in life is we understand this. You have the tool of hardcore listening, the tool of completely not listening at all when you're with below, and a tool of give and take. Those are those three social skills you must have if you want the good life, health, wealth, love, and happiness, which, by the way, this scientist who wrote The Moral Landscape is interesting. He calls it, the whole book is about well-being, which he also defines as the good life. So I thought it was, even scientists are agreeing with this quest that we're on in the 67 steps to go for the good life. It's an idea-generating, belief-generating machine. If you believe that the best strategy is always a hammer, you will be hampered. You will be very inefficient at getting the good life. It happened to me, like I said, Mississippi. I'm there listening. Nothing. 20 years later, or not been that long, but many years later, nothing. That meal in New York, that was only 4 years ago or whatever, I've received immense value from it every single year. But remember, we talked about going straight to the top. Most of us have a poor image of those top 33%. We think, our friend, a lot of people go, my parents are my 33% above me. No, parents are rarely the 33%, because in all honesty, if parents were almost always deserving to be in your top 33%, This 67 steps wouldn't need to wouldn't need to exist because you've learned it already, but we haven't learned it. I haven't learned. Doesn't mean our parents are evil, bad, stupid. Doesn't mean any of that. Just means they weren't fully equipped with the philosophy, with the direction that you're getting now, the direction of going to those people. When you break your leg, you go straight to a medical doctor. You do not go to a witch doctor. You do not go, I talk about Bob Marley, the great reggae singer. He died of cancer, started in his toe. And those experts, this is a good example of not knowing who's in the room. Those experts are like, let us fix it. Let us cut it out or whatever. I don't remember the exact story, but you can read about it. It's an interesting story. Let us cut it out of your toe, Bob. No. He knew more than them. And guess what? He went to some, not witch doctors, but he went to some spas or something in the mountains of Europe. And believe it or not, spas don't fix cancer in the toe. Now, I'm not saying medical doctors are always right. Nobody's infallible, but I'm just telling you this story. We know the outcome. By the time he makes it back to doctors and says, yeah, I'm going to listen to who's in the room, he's dead. On his deathbed, he says to his son, Ziggy, money can't buy life. And that's why the good life that we're talking about is not just about money. Because if you don't listen to this that I'm talking about right now, and you don't know who's in the room, not only will you make a heck of a lot less money, but your health will suffer, your happiness will suffer, and your social life, friends, family, and romance. These books behind me are not about infallibility. They're about knowing who's in the room. I was, this morning I was talking, if you're in the VIP program, on this book, Bulletproof. Is Dave Asprey infallible? Does he know everything about diet? No. But I respect him as somebody that I can use his research as maybe a springboard, a catalyst to new thoughts, a experiment that I run. There's many. This book is full this bookshelf behind me, full of the expertise of people in many subjects. Knowing who's in the room is why reading is so important. Go back, if you haven't seen my TEDx talk on the law of 33%, why I read a book a day. It's not to show off. It's not for head knowledge and book knowledge. It's so that I can be respecting the efforts, the work of people who have spent their life's work on various subjects. I'm doing a conference here this month. Check out my new conference series that I'm be doing around the world. In-person conferences, 2 or 3 day conferences. I got this one, Joel Salatin and Dr. David Buss are going to be here. Depending on when you watch this video, it'll be different speakers. But, Dr. David Buss, he's in his 60s. He spent 40 years studying psychology and the brain. Doesn't mean he's infallible, but it means when he's in the room, I should at least respect and go, what's this guy talking about? Go check out a YouTube video. I put out, some free videos, and I did one from a taxi in London. I think it's titled something like The Worst Mindset or something. And I talk about how most people, we have this when new ideas and we're in a room and people say stuff that we're not used to hearing, we go, like that's our attitude, as opposed to like, Like even David Asprey's book, he was saying some things I haven't heard before, and my gut feeling was to be like, no, you're wrong. But then I was thinking, have some respect. Many people swear by his diet. Now, of course, that's anecdotal evidence, not pure science that it's a scientific reason to believe in it. But I have at least enough respect to go, maybe he knows something I don't know. And that attitude of, what do they know? That's the attitude that comes when you know who's in the room. You're in a room with amazing people. And by the way, some of you are never in the room with amazing people. You got to fix that. You must gain the ability to find mentors and things like this. So, question for you. What is an example, I gave you mine when I was in Mississippi, of a time there was people you should have been listening to that you didn't listen to? Give an example. Write well, by the way. Some of you in comments, you don't need to write a book or an essay, but always work on fluidity of words and communication. So write a little, couple lines on that. Number 2 question. What's an example of people you were in a room and you didn't realize you should have not listened to anybody and you let them plant seeds into your brain? People who are not qualified to do that. What's an example? So the first question is qualified people you were in a room and you didn't listen to, you didn't give them a chance. And the second question is unqualified people that you did listen to. What's an example? Okay? Those two things. And third question is, how can you get yourself around people who deserve your respect, so you can say, yeah, I'm in the room with, like I said, Alan Nation, Gary Townsend, Dr. Gordon Hazzard. Okay? What's an example of that, of some things you can do today to just increase the quality? All right? So thanks so much, and I will see you on the next step.